Welcome back. If you're anything like me and you've got to the end of one of like Nate's videos or any of the other YouTubers out there helping us learn N8N, and you're asking yourself, how accurate is this sorting? And you also do it from a business perspective. If I'm going to sell this, or if I'm going to use this myself and I'm paying actual credits here, how accurate does this need to be for someone else to purchase it? And so in this episode, I build and share how to create a repeatable evaluation framework in N8N. This enables you to measure the real-world accuracy of things like Nate Herk's inbox agent. And we move beyond demos and intuition to quantifiable data performance across messy data, and then also learn how we can use clean data sets like golden data sets to be able to actually improve our automation accuracy even further. Some examples here that I created and ran through this is an electric company came in at the accuracy of 65%. An advertising firm had an accuracy of 24%. Well, that golden data set hovered around nearly 100%. And why does this evaluation matter? Because this allows you, when you're working with clients or you're working in the corporate world, to have repeatable, measurable, comparable, comparable, automatable production data. So it's not guessing. And then this also does another thing is when you start to leverage evaluation frameworks, you as an automation engineer become better because you look at it and you're like, okay, 65%, I can't sell that to someone. And that's just, while it's cool that I automated it, I can't turn around and make that a corporate viable tool. And then that challenges you to learn other things. And that will lead you down the path of doing things like reg and improving the quality or even how you set up your evaluation. And when you do that, you also become better along with the accuracy of your data. One of the things that I've done here is, I went to ChatGPT and I was asking these kind of questions, and they were saying, hey, if the accuracy is somewhere 70 to 80%, it's not sellable. It's great for a prototype. Once you get up into 80 to 88%, maybe it's sellable as an assistant, but we're still on that place of where maybe it's not really commercially viable, or maybe it's just a one-off for a company, but it starts to become commercially viable at 88 to 93. Some of the things we have to think about is what's the cost of losing, like an important message, or that it gets sorted to the wrong place. And really, to get to this point of enterprise grade, we really need to get up to 93%. And to do that, I've built evaluations using N8N's evaluations and wrapped it around the base code and plugged it in. And in this way, it allows you to still run your production nodes, but at the same point, it allows you to trigger and test the evaluation so you can see how accurate. If you've changed models, and models are dynamic, they constantly change. So it's different than just regular automation with code, because you push up code and minus maybe some configuration, it stays the same. These models are dynamic. And so you need to come back and you need to check the validity of those. And then in addition to that, I've built some tools here that allow us to take in data sets to be able to run it. And then to be able to do this specifically, I've set up multiple data sets. I have an advertising firm. I've also done an electric firm. And then I've also scored my 50 of my own emails to see how effective they are. And so we can go ahead and we can run that here. And I'll kick off and run this test. And so this is going through 100 different emails. That what I've done is I've worked with both ChatGPT and Claude, ChatGPT 5.2, to be able to come up with a diverse set of emails, and within that context, using the same scoring mechanism that we have within the text classifier, using these same scores to be able to parse that out. I've moved that back into ChatGPT and Claude to come up with a really clear expectation of what we should get for results. And then that allows us to have an actual result. And then what we can do is we can compare that against other models. And it's in this isolation where when you call, you have it's a single call and it only has that context, and it needs to make an evaluation of that email and then sort it. And so in that, we really lose a lot of accuracy to the point where it can almost become ineffective. Like if it's down there below 60-70%, it's really at that point we're talking about a flip of a coin on our accuracy. And so one of the reasons that I actually really like working with email assistants is you can start here on email assistants, and as you learn how to test and as you learn how to validate what your results are here in your email assistant, it allows you to try other things like reg and other ways of improving leveraging your AI assistants to be able to parse out that data and get much more accurate results. And as you learn those skills, you'll be able to turn those into things that's what corporate companies want. They want that level of quality coming through on the other side. And so right here, we can see that when I ran that, we're actually only at 24%. And so what we can do is we can come in and we can look here and we can see here's our expected result and this was our actual result. We actually get a lot of these unknown, and that's actually one of the other things that we'll talk about is I had to add unknown here or you would get failures. And so actually it was in this evaluation that I learned that if you don't do that, you're going to have some emails that just fail right there and don't pass through. All right, let's walk step by step to be able to go from having your production code to adding an evaluation trigger into a place where you can actually score everything at the end. So the first step that we have here, this is when fetching a data set. So this specifically is we come over here and we go to evaluation. And then we click on here and new evaluation event. And so you can see here, this is where we choose the specific data table. And if we have any data table set up, we can choose that. Now, you can also go out and use Google. I will show you how to create these. Actually from beginning to scratch and kind of how to think about these too. It's not only sometimes realistic, but we'll also teach you how to create a golden set, something that should work almost all the time so that if there's actually something wrong with the model, that'll be a great way to detect if there's an issue with. All right, so then the next part here, and so you can see what I have set up is exactly that. And I can, for testing again, I can say limit to one row, and then I can, execute that step and it pulls in the first row. Now, what we want to do next is we want to be able, oops, that's funny. Added right there. So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to map the input or the output from Google, the input in the text classifier, so that it is the same for Gmail as it is for the data that we have. So a good way to do that is to come to your text classifier and see what the format is here. And so you can run your Gmail trigger and you can see that, hey, the subject is passed in here. And what we need to do is we need to also pass in that same object of JSON header subject for our subject, and we want to use JSON text for our body. That way, is as long as we're passing in the data and it looks the same, then we don't have to do anything here with the text classifier. And that's exactly what is happening here, is that this is taking this, it's setting that header subject. So we have it here and we have text here. Now we can have different values here and how we store it within the database. We just need to make sure that the name or the key is the same that's being accepted into our text classifier. So then when we get to the text classifier, this is essentially, we don't change anything here. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that I have added unknown, and that is due to the fact that as soon as you start running on any edge cases, you'll start to get unknown, and you actually run into there's quite a few unknowns, and then it actually stops working right away. And so even at that, it didn't feel like it was a fair test to be able to test. So I added unknown. So that allowed us to say, is like, if it can't find something here, we're going to just drop it in here. It'll still be evaluated as a failure. It's just that we're not going to break our test. And so this also is another reason to do these evaluations, is you start to learn like, oh, actually, if I'm going to use text classifier, this is one thing that I want to do, is add an unknown. Or I can actually run into cases where an email that I thought was going to be evaluated was not evaluated, and it failed right here, and that email didn't proceed any further depending on how you output your text classifier here. And that also allows you, extra steps too, is like, hey, maybe the unknown is something where I want a human to view it. And nothing changed here except for one thing we can do is we can switch between different models here. And so I'll show you how to do that later, is that we can test these models, and instead of just testing across maybe 1, 2, 3 manual tests, is we can test across a whole different data set, right? If I have a customer, like, one thing you want to do is go out to your customer and say, hey, provide me real data so that I can then have it scored and I can come up and provide real accurate results. And then I can also see how far do I need to improve it so that it hits the accuracy goals of my customers. And let's see, I think where do I have it? Here. Oh, it's here. Okay, so this, just to kind of inject that, is like, from the beginning, you can put on 2 different hats. You can put on the hat of a business owner or a business leader, and these are some questions you should, or some statements you should do, or some questions you should ask. You should say, if you have a certain accuracy that you want out of it, make sure you communicate that with whoever's doing your automation, and also provide real data, because if they're just using simulated data, it could be dramatically different. And we can see that here within the evaluations that were done. Let me come back here, save this. Under evaluations, we can see that the one data set, this last data set here of advertising firms, scored as low as 24% consistently. Some of the other ones scored, somewhere here like 60, 58%. And then some of like my golden data sets, would be somewhere between 90 to 100% accurate. And that allowed me to really more test the model and just make sure that it is consistently working throughout that. And then provide feedback too. So another thing you can do is you could ask someone who's automating, say, hey, what I'd like to do is go ahead and preliminarily score it, but then I want to come back and I want to confirm that. And so now you're using, the business knowledge, a subject matter expert in that area, and you're asking their advice, and that will allow you, possibly not only to improve your model, but that allows you to possibly add like a RAG system to further improve the accuracy of your results. And share what's really important for you. Ask about monthly costs, because this can determine which models, or possibly they can run multiple models and get a shared result, and then kind of choose which one and average, those out. And so if accuracy is really, really important, you can do that. You can talk about fallback models. And if you're able to share, talk about the impact, like if one of these emails was incorrectly labeled, like how could it impact your business? And so that can allow someone like an automation engineer or an AI automation engineer on the other side to be able to design the system that's accurate for you. Now you put on your AI automation engineer hat and you can ask if they have what the expected accuracy is. They may come back and say 100%. They may say 50%. And it kind of mirrors over here, ask for real data, and so with that real data, you can, and then maybe even this would be something too, is if you're able to get a snapshot of that real data, it could be really nice to come back on a quarterly basis and confirm that the model is still working accurately with real updated data. And again, ask for feedback on the training data. And this is not only like an AI engineer, but a data engineer is going to ask, can you help me actually confirm that this training data is accurate, and understand the priority. I think one thing that I would have seen back here is we probably would want high priority at the top, right? Just simple things like that. So that gets evaluated naturally first, or it takes priority over other types of classification. So when you know what are the most important things, that can help you in how you build your model. And then eval and test various different models. Try the different models there. It's really easy right now to be able to go out and try, like with OpenRouter, try hundreds of different models. Not that you have to, but even just researching and knowing which ones are effective, you can easily switch this. And now you have something that running 100 emails or running 1,000 emails through something, which won't take too long, can provide you real data that you can share with the clients. And then another thing here is a switch from maybe automation in the past, where if you had a piece of code and it was out there, that doesn't change. Here, models can change after they've been deployed. And so we need to keep a live check on those models to make sure that something hasn't changed or that hasn't deteriorated. And then providing realistic monthly cost. If we're using AI models to be able to provide feedback in these automation workflows, being able to share that with a customer, and this is where we also need to know how much data is going to flow through each one of these pipelines, and then we can provide that back to the customer. So no surprises, and at the same time, it helps when these questions get answered. It helps us be better automation engineers, and it helps business owners be more effective, or business leaders be more effective in the ROI that they're receiving from this type of AI automation. All right, so then when we come back to here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to execute the workflow. We'll follow it through. So the result comes back up here. And with the text classifier, this only shows us this is an output. I have a feature request. It would be awesome for this text classifier to also share this as something like what I do here, and I say like actual label or text classified result, something like that, and then I don't have to do some of this additional work here. So this next node that we have here is the evaluation or determination normal. This allows us to be able to embed our evaluations in our production code. So that, and this is also, if there's a bug or something, that allows us, even in production, to run a batch of tests, and that data comes here. It doesn't get redirected. None of that email, in these cases, email or chats are sent out. And that allows us to do really quick debugging and get back to, our clients that we have. And so what this does, all you have to do here is just to say check if evaluating. And this will determine, it knows, did this come from an evaluation trigger or did this come from a normal? And so it will be redirected that way. I have seen a couple times when you go single node by node, somewhere around here, it gets confused and goes normal. But when you're just running it as full evaluation, or you're saying execute workflow, it works all the way through. The next step that we need to do is, now that we know, right? So here, now that we know that, hey, this data is an evaluation, then in the next node here, we're going to set the billing and finance. And so what this does here is I need to be able to pass along specifically what was our result. And so this is essentially taking this and saying, oh, this is the result. And so it really seems to be an extra step. It's one of the reasons that a text classifier can cause you a lot of extra work here, but it breaks down the steps so we can see it. So the difference here is that this customer support, when I come up here, you can see I pass through all the other values. They just slide from our input to the output, and then we add an actual label here. Now this actual label is another, I've used this, and this matches what I have here. So expected label is the value that we expect, and this is the value that we actually get after running it through the workflow. Okay, then we merge all those back together, and now we have one actual label. Doesn't matter, they merge back together, and then we can take that specific data there, and what we can do here is, now what we have to do is we need to set the output. And so what this does is, this is the way, is that up until this point, like if I delete this, and so when we first do these are all null, but when this is deleted, what we've done is we've got our score, and now what we're doing is we're writing that score into the database. So then we'll have a historical reference of what that score is, so that we can come back when we're doing our debugging and we can see what the result is here. Okay. And so that's what this specifically does, is that is writing, to the specific database. And this is one of the places where I wish there was a better way of, like, you have one data table, and maybe there's a reason if you had multiple lines why we do this. But here, this is where you want to make sure that this matches the same data table that you're using back here. So when I start here, this allows us to try many different data sets. We can easily switch. We just need to make sure that what we read from the beginning here in this data set, right here when we're setting the output, this needs to match here. So if you add a new data set and you want to run it, you're going to have to make updates in both of these places. Okay, so then after this step is done, and I think if we do execute workflow, and it'll go all the way to the end, and then we come back to data tables and I hit refresh. See that very first line, and we only ran one line. This has now been updated, and that is specifically here on set output. Another interesting thing, and it's kind of how they set up evaluations, is the next thing that I needed to do is when we get back here, let me go here. Okay, when we come here underneath evaluations and then we double click on evaluation, what shows up here in this table isn't necessarily just what we grabbed initially from the database. this, we actually have to come back to here. We'll come back to here. So this is where you add additional outputs. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that I had expected label showing up underneath the evaluations tab, and I needed to have the expected confidence minimum showing up there also. So that allowed that data now to be, that's already in the database, that allowed us to grab it from the database and display it when we're doing our debugging or kind of reviewing our evaluations. And then the last step that we have here is we're doing a comparison. What we're saying is, hey, we want to check that, we want to compare our expected result versus our actual result. And you can actually have multiple different ways of doing this. You can do correctness scores. So if you have something that's scored from 0 to 5 or 1 to 5 here, you can use this. But here, since we're doing categorization, it's either true or it's false. So it either works or it doesn't. And we can probably come back and you could add additional information there that would allow you, but right now in categorization, this is the way that you do it. And so everything is either it matched as we expected or it did not. Now, if we want to run the whole test, we can just remove this limit row and click save here. And then we could run it here, but what we want to do here is we want to go up to evaluations. And then we want to click Run Test. And so now this is going to go through, and this is going to go through that whole workflow that we were just talking about. And that is, let's come back here. We'll have to make it bigger here. Okay, so this is going to follow 100 times all the way through, and then each of those scores are going to be written into this database. And if I hit refresh here, we'll see that this was already here. We already see that we actually have quite a few unknowns where we were expecting something like customer support and we were actually getting unknown. And this is probably another reason to move beyond using the text classifier, because we don't really get much data back to be able to maybe debug that and improve our scores by looking versus what we actually have for our expected and our actual results. And then when we come back here, it keeps running, takes whatever, it depends, it's like 100 or whatever it takes to to get through this. But once we get this result, we have that ability to be able to walk through, and this is almost like a snapshot, right? Even if it failed here, it's still a successful run. This just happens to be the result that we have. And again, this is that categorization of our scoring, which is either a 1 or a 0. Okay, and so it's already completed here. And again, it's really interesting here that it's very consistent here at only 24% of our values are as expected. So I'm going to go back here now, and we have some other data tables. So I have another one, which I went out to, and I'll walk through this in a little bit, is I went out to ChatGPT and also Claude, and I asked for 100 different emails. You can start with 50 or whatever you want. You can numerically look at what's effective that way. So now we're going to choose a different data table. I set up a mock electric company and their emails, but I used the same scoring system. And then I had them pre-scored both with ChatGPT or Claude, and then I brought that data together, and then we built this data table from here. So we'll go back here, and to be able to switch this across, we'll double click here, and we're going to update here, and we're going to say the electric company here, And then all I need to do here, and I believe it is the set output, is the other one that's data table, and we'll update this to an electric company. And we can kind of come into the data table and we can see that there are different types of emails, like, hey, there's a power outage. And then it gives the information, someone in Tacoma, Washington, there's an update. And so we can see that we have each of these unique. And so it is classifying based on these two pieces of data and what's expected there. So we'll come back here. We'll go ahead and save that. And now we've completely shifted our whole evaluation to run and use a different data set. And we'll go ahead and run that test. Maybe. Click one more time. Okay. Oh, it actually did it twice. Hilarious. Maybe this would be another feature to add, is the ability to cancel tests. But we'll let that run and then come back to it and look at the results. And this is another reason that you actually want to fine tune your models for specific companies, because even if you're using the same categories, if you took, let's say that we took this and we took this workflow and we were working on company A and we had these great results, and we went to the next customer and we said, hey, our past customer, they were like 95% accurate, like everything using real data. And then we go here and then all of a sudden it's like 50%, and this is one of the reasons to find out, is that if you only tested a couple emails, you could actually have really poor accuracy, or the accuracy could change over time. Oops, I must have pop that in there while they're doing that. And so this is another reason that it's really easy, and then also that ability to run this while production data is running. And I think this is a big leap in automation, or the way that we approach automation is by embedding our test within production. And I know that you could do A/B test in production, but this is a live way that's integrated into not only the way that we build our automation, but that we constantly evaluate and fine tune and improve our evaluations and our data. So here it ran twice, and this again is one of the reasons to do it, is that we can see the same data ran twice shortly after each other, and the percentage change between this. And so maybe sometimes you want to run it 4 or 5 times, or maybe have a bigger data set. But this can kind of give you that edge, and that maybe what you do is that you put up guardrails and you say, hey, if this ever drops below like 85%, then we're going to send in an email or a text, to yourself or someone on your team to evaluate that, to see if something's changed with the models, and then possibly, update the customer and give them live results on how this is, or have a dashboard. You could also create a dashboard, on the accuracies of this, and share that within your business. All right. So now we've had a couple different. I'm going to show you one more data set that I've set up before we go much further. So one of the things, and I believe it's only 20 items. So I set up what I classify like a golden data set, and this should work. And so I was working, and validating before putting it in, and I had to make some changes because some of the, especially in the promotion, those would go to unknown frequently. But this is another way that you could create a separate test that should pass at nearly 100% every time, because these are worded at such a level that they align with the keywords and the key things that you were asking to match. And so this can possibly help you see if there's a bug in your system. This can see maybe like the high priority here, maybe they're not showing up as much, and so maybe rearranging the order on high priority that those get evaluated first can allow to improve those accuracy. So sometimes you can use a golden data set, and we'll go back, and again, all that we need to do is we need to click here, and we go down and we find our data set there, and here when we set our output. And if you don't have a set output in yours, you might be at a place where you only have to change it in one location. And then we'll go ahead and save, and we'll run this evaluation. And then this is fewer items, but items that should be very, very clear to the models as to what is the clear, accurate categorization of each and every one of those items. So there's these different, you can create other models along that. So you have your realistic data, having your gold model. This is really interesting. Okay, 100% accurate, finished with errors. So we can go here. Okay, so we have customer support, finance, high priority. Did I break something? This would be awesome on the fly. All right, so let's go back. I did delete something. And maybe when I did, I did. Okay, so this is a perfect case. So when I was adding something here to demonstrate it, and when I deleted it, it deleted this line here. And so this is actually one of the reasons that you want to have, honestly, I didn't set this up. So this is beautiful. Bonus points for getting lucky. All right, so this is one of those times that you actually want to have a golden data set, because it makes it really clear, which we see here in when we go back to our evaluations that finished with errors. It was really clear that there was an issue, and we can see that, hey, we had customer support, we had financing, high priority. So this really looked like there was an issue with promotion. And sure enough, it's funny when I do that. All right, so sure enough, that's what I had accidentally made a mistake there. So then click on evaluations, we'll run test again. And this is a good place. I like to start with the golden data set right away. It helps me work out any kind of maybe technical bugs that I have that are going on that way. And then from that, I like to move into having something that is more realistic. And so we can see here, completed real quick, 100% accurate. We can run it a couple more times. I ran it earlier. And I think I was getting down to 90, 95, and I made a couple more changes. And there's a little glitch there. It doesn't recognize. Could be my system. But both of these will pop up here in a little bit. So here we can see. And this allows us to, if you really want, you can fine tune this. So you can come down here and you can see, okay, which one was it? You know, which one of these did we have an issue with, right? And so it was this one right here was number 7. And so if I click into here is one way to do it. I can go to the golden data set, or I can look at the number here and we can see that, hey, for some reason this one came up as unknown. And so if we really wanted, we could take this data, go back to ChatGPT, kind of find out why, or we can be good with that, 95% accuracy with what we have. But this is what you can do as fine tuning, and you can look at the specific data and maybe see why and do it compare. And it might be something that you need to add a couple more keywords here. Okay. All right, so then now that we have done all of that, I think the next thing that we want to do here for planning for your data set, here's some helpful tidbits. One thing that you want to start with is determine the type of data set. Like the examples of a golden data set, something that should pass nearly 100% of the time. This is not necessarily to prove out that your model is working efficiently, but this is to prove out that each and every time that you run it, it helps you see and catch bugs or issues that might actually be outside the data set. Or possibly, this is also very helpful, is if the data set itself, or if the model behind it has changed, having a golden data set is one way for you to maybe more accurately determine that, versus that you have a lot of like random emails or random data coming in that you're processing. This can say, hey, maybe we have to come back and evaluate this data set a little bit closer. Think about like customer data is another example, is that you take real live customer. Here, the example would be emails. Maybe you have 1,000 emails that represent a typical day or typical month of a customer. And then another thing that you can do is, if you're looking to get or to help out certain types of businesses, you can go out and create data sets that are similar. So maybe you want to go working with plumbing businesses or electrical or ad businesses. If you can have data sets that say, hey, our models or our automation, our end-to-end automation or N8N automation, that it works effectively here, this can help you in doing that. And then even within a business, you might have different areas. If you're working in the corporate world, you might actually have to create these custom ones and fine tune how you're doing it for each and your prompts for each and every type of business. One thing that I like to do is I like to leverage LLM as a judge. And what that is that I will use something like the current version of ChatGPT or Claude or similar, and I'll create a data set and have it scored that way, or scored by even LLM as a council, and have them scored collectively, and then come up with what we believe to be the most accurate answer. And in addition to that, asking your customers or subject matter experts to score it additionally will provide even a higher quality mark. Then what we can do there is then we can come over here and test the accuracy. And here what we're going to do is leverage those evaluations and use weaker or cheaper models for those judgments. And this is where we get to fine tune our prompts so that we have a known good. And then what we try to do is we try to think about our ROI and our accuracy using cheaper or weaker models, and then still providing high accuracy for the customers. So now we're going to go step by step, and I'll share these prompts with you. The first thing that we want to do is here what we'll do is we'll do one for a flower shop. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to use this prompt. You can optimize these prompts again, but like here you're a data generation assistant, and this allows us specifically here is to keep the same format that we had back here. Is that when the data came in, we're using the same exact format. We're keeping it that way so that we can easily plug it into here. And so what we'll do is we'll just copy this, and I'll provide a link to all of this. And then we'll do let's see if I got it. There we go. And we'll go out to ChatGPT. And you can try these on different ones and see how it shows up. We'll start a new chat. And here, what we're going to do is we'll do this for a flower shop. Now that we have our flower shop data set, the next thing that we want to do is we want to have that data set scored. So in the same way, if we imported data from a customer or even yourself, and you read like your last 1,000 emails, what you'll want to do is use the LLM as a judge to score that, so then we can bring it back into our N8N and add it as part of one of our data sets to review, to actually look at the accuracy of those specific models. So what we can do here, and this one again, you can update this, but here I'm saying, hey, I want you to score, and specifically how I want you to score. These are the same exact prompts that we have back here. So this is the same text classifier. It's the same for each one of these. And so we have that specifically. Here we go. And then you can add additional things that will help in the scoring on how maybe one, like high priority takes first, then this, and that will help specifically in the scoring, which you may come back and update your prompt model later. So this can actually help you improve your prompting later. And here's another thing, is that since this is classification, it requires one exact match. So being really clear on that to help it think like, oh, I need to choose one of these and then the exact constraint. So we're going to go ahead and copy. We're going to copy all of this. Okay, and we're going to come over here and we're going to do ChatGPT. And this would work with anything. And then here, the input, we're going to go back to, let's see, where is it? Oh, here it is. We're going to go back here, which is our 10 for our flower shop. We're going to copy that JSON. And then we're going to paste it here. So now what we've done is we've generated the data or captured the data from someone else. And now we're going to score that data using LLM as a judge, something at a much higher level that also has much more context around this, so it can do a better job of scoring. And so as this goes, then what we'll do is we're going to come back into here, and we're going to create from that data, we're going to create a data set, and we're going to convert it to CSV. Only reason we need to do that is, as of right now, the data tables within N8N accept CSV as an input into the data table. Okay. And so now we can see that it brings back that exact data. It has also scored it or categorized it and provided a score for each and every one of those. So now this is really like our baseline for testing. So now what I can do is I can copy this and I can go back to here. And what we would do is, if you have anything, and I'll share this, this is really simple. This just takes JSON format and then maps it so it's readable over here. So essentially we're taking JSON and inserting it as JSON so that it can be read easily by N8N. So we paste that there. We execute this. Little gut check. We enter 10 items. We should have 10 items out. Then the next thing that we do over here, and specifically this create a data set, that was a code node, and it was specifically JavaScript. And then this node here, this would be a convert node, convert to file. And then specifically here, what we do is say convert to CSV. And so with those two nodes, then I can come here and we see that the operation is convert to CSV. The data is the data that we had here, and it should look exactly like this. And so it's going to take this and then just reformat it, keeping everything the same except for the format. And we can execute this step. This will provide us the ability to download this file. We can say download, and you can see here it was saved as file 1. And now what I can do is if I come back here, when you're in your specific, like you have all the workflows, credentials, executions, there's another tab here. And this tab is data tables. So we can click on data tables. That means that these data tables are available for all of our workflows. And we can click create data table. And here we're going to import from that CSV that we just created. So I'll double click here and we will say import here. And here we'll just say flower shop and then say leave this here for the header. Now you may get this happens sometimes, is that even though we didn't have an underscore, it creates this. I simply just delete this. If you have an ID, there's an internal ID within the data tables for N8N. And so you might have to update this to something else. You can just do a quick double check here, is that our confidence would be a score and the rest are strings. So that looks great. And you can do another quick little check here, which we should have our expected scores. Actual label would be null, and there was a mistake here. So I forgot. Oh, what I should have done here is when I copied. Oh, interesting. All right. So what I should have done there is I'll come back here and here's my problem. If I go here, I can zoom in a little bit, and let's do, here we go. All right, so this here should have been simply null. Okay, that won't change anything here per se, because this model will be overwritten while we're writing that. And I added an extra step. This is actually kind of right now a manual step. There's ways to automate it, but this was a way to switch between models and all. All right, so actually that right here, I believe that is set outputs. And one thing you can see here is that the model value is manually set right here. And so if you are changing, if you want to change like between 4.1 to 5.2, you can simply drag over here and then just come back here. And when you do your run, oops, wrong one. When you do your run here, you'll just update this to be the specific model that you want. Okay, so then when we come back here, now that we have this data set, it's already created, we can click on data tables and we can, flower ship. Okay, flower shop. Okay, so then we can update that to flower shop. And then what we'll do is we'll come back here and we will rerun this again. So, and even to, and so actually this will show you how we overwrite that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to double click on here, and then we'll come down here and we'll say flower shop. We're not going to limit anything. We'll run all 10. We're still using ChatGPT 4.1 mini. We'll come to our evaluations and we will update flower shop, and then also just leave the model as 4.1. And we will save this. And now we can go ahead and click on evaluations. And when we run this test, we're going to be running against that specific data set. Actually, that reminds me, there might be, what I would probably like to do is maybe also add the data set that I was running in the same way that I'm just storing the actual or the model here. It might also be helpful to store the dataset name here. I don't believe it is stored anywhere here. Now we would know, we can go back through our executions and we would know that, but it's just something, if you have a lot of data sets and you're running them, to be able to come back and have that, because it would be really actually really helpful here as a feature request for N8N if they just simply added the data set that you ran here for this. So we'll go ahead and click Run Test. And so this is going to take those known values against the actual values, and it's going to execute for each one of those 10. And then we'll get that score. And here we go, is that right now on those 10, we have an accuracy of only 30%. And so this is clearly something that is not enterprise level, but from this we can learn a lot, is that a flower shop is right now really, based on the categories, we're only get 30% accuracy, where some of our other models are as high as 60% or as low as 24%. And then our golden set, again, is still running. And when it is very, very clear, this model does great. But when it comes to realistic data, and that's what we have to work with, is yes, you can automate things, but if you want to make it enterprise level, you have to do it at a level where your accuracy is very high, or to the level that you yourself or your customers find that there's an actual return on investment for that. Next thing that I'm going to talk about here is how to, let's go back here. So then we can apply that for any data set, and that's how we create any data set. And to create your own, or for a specific customer, there's another tool that I've created here. And this one, we can come over here. This one is Gmail. If we click on Gmail, there is get many messages. So I use that node. And then this is edit fields, or the edit, which is edit fields, edit or set fields. And then finally, again, we use that same convert to JSON, or I should just say convert. And then we would actually convert that to JSON. And then this would be our input back here, again, using the scorer, or the LLM, the LLM judge, and then we would just run through that again. So if we come here, and this is a great way where maybe this is kind of like the way that you finally test. So you get it all set up, you have everything set up here, and then, or maybe your customer actually gives you access, or you have your customer run this and they give you access to this JSON. So here, I would just simply say, hey, I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm going to have it read 10 of my emails. Here you would click to the specific email account that you want to read. And this one's one of my personal emails, execute. And so I'm going to unpin this test. All right. And so now I have these 10 emails. And so I'm going to take these 10 emails. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, just like what we did before, we're going to reformat it, header string, or header in text, and we're going to reformat it in that format. And so one of the things that I do is I help with setting up IoT using LoRaWAN for small companies. And so this is one of the other messages that I've been tracking as I've been setting that up and improving and looking at other ways or how other companies do this as part of my research. And so I execute this step, unpin in test, and then what we're left with here is now we have those fields. Now we're going to take this data here, and this clearly is promotion. We're going to execute this and convert it to JSON, and execute this step, and then we can, like here, we can actually go to JSON. Oops. Let me execute again. I'm going to download this. This file here should be the the JSON, which is the header subject, and I should be able to take this data now and come back, copy all of this, and then I can come back to ChatGPT again, and I can ask, and I can just say, I have that other previous model that we just scored, please in the same way score. Okay, and so it'll go through this, it'll score all of that, and then we take that, download again, and then we go back and process it. And so this is kind of the step-by-step way that we can do. And so you see unique ID, and it's going to score it into one of those categories. And here there's just like a lot of space. Definitely this is promotional, 99% accuracy. And again, here's one of the things I needed to update my prompt to have this to be null. Again, it'll just overwrite that, but I will update the prompt when I share it with you, so it is null. And then what we can do here is once it's all done scoring, we can go ahead and copy this, and we'll go through this again. So again, I'm going to take this data set here, and we're going to create a new data set. And then what we'll do is we'll remove everything in between the brackets. There's obviously other ways that you can automate this, but this is the one place where using LLM and as a judge, and then bringing it back to be able to actually physically look at it and check is a great thing to do here. And so then what we'll do is we'll convert this one, execute. So now we'll download this, and this should be our file to CSV. And we'll do this one more time. We'll create a data table, and we'll say Steven's personal email. And we're going to upload this here. Create. Again, same thing happens here. We can just click here, and then we can say create. And then what we'll do is now we have this specific data table, which you can see it looks like a lot of promotional data there. And then we can just come back here and we can run it again. So I can double click on here, and I have Steve's personal email, and same thing, evaluation over here, Steve's personal email. And then what we want to do is go ahead and say save. And then underneath evaluations, we're going to go ahead and run that test. Okay, so now it's running, it's processing those 10, it's doing it based on mine. And here we can see this gives a 90% accuracy. And if we go ahead, we can look at it a couple different ways. Like almost all of these were high promotion, and this one was expected to be customer support, could be high priority. That might not be a bad choice here within that. And so when it comes to reading promotional email, and this is one of the reasons why maybe it's really easy for Gmail that they have the tab promotional email, is for them to determine if these are promotional emails. So in this case, I get with this personal email, there's lots of promotional emails. And so this would be how you get this specifically step by step. And then that helps you when you come back and you want to take something like here where we have an email classification agent. And if you want to take this and you want it to be enterprise grade, you really do need to have some type of evaluation in here. And it's even more important than it ever has been in automation, given how models act and how models can drift, to be able to have this. And given how it is really specific to the data models, like we've seen a flower shop scores differently than a plumbing shop, or someone's personal email might score differently on the typical type of contents that are within that. And using evaluations allows you to really fine tune and decide which models are here, to fine tune your prompts. And even here, I've spent a lot of time after this, is that prompts alone really are not going in, unless it's like really clear emails, like within maybe a company or something. Like prompts alone will not get you the accuracy that you need for enterprise, at least not at this point. So using things like reg or ways of classifying and helping your model say, hey, here's real good examples. That's really how, if you're going to bring it to the next level. But without doing this evaluation, it's really hard for you to understand the level of accuracy. And so if you want to take your AI automation to the next level, this is really like one of the fundamental principles that you need to have, in addition to understanding how to automate things in the first place. So I'd love feedback on this. If you have any suggestions or any future things that you'd like to see, I'm going to do this on other models. I'm going to go through the testing side of this to help you take what has already been shared and help you actually see the effectiveness of each of these types of models or each of these types of approaches when you are creating your AI automation here in N8N. Good luck. Also, another thing here, I added an extra tool here, is you can take your data here, any of your data tables here, and if you want, let's say you made some changes. So let's say you're working in here, and you've made some changes in here. I was unable to reset my password. Can you please help me? This is very urgent. Okay, so then we click here. So now that data is updated, but if you wanted that data again to be able to test it somewhere else, one of the tools you have here is this get rows. And so this, again, you can export any table. And so here, what we'll do here is we'll say, hey, I'm going to choose a row. And then you can choose the specific data set. And so I already have the golden data set here. I can execute this. And then, there were 20 items. If I go to JSON, somewhere in here, I should be able to find, let's